Now, your News 8 forecast first.
Good evening and happy Friday. It is a chilly evening out there. 29 right now in Rochester, Dansville at 29 as well. And Penn you are also at 29 degrees this evening. We saw some snow showers earlier in the day. They have come to an end, and there's actually a little bit of sun out over Lake Ontario. If you are right along the lake shore, you may see just a little bit of that before it sets. Snow showers moving back in through the overnight, just a coating to probably an inch by morning. Temperatures falling into the mid-20s, a chilly start to the weekend. Do we warm up at all? Have that answer coming up. News 8 at 5 starts now.
Now on News 8.
Rochester police arrest 2 people in the death of Edlin Chun.
State Assemblyman Bill Rylak throws his hat in the ring for Greasetown supervisor.
We got a really remarkable vote, and we're very happy about that.
Congresswoman Slaughter applauds the Violence Against Women Act, but says the news is not all positive.
From WROC in Rochester, this is News 8 at 5 in high definition.
Good evening, everyone. Chilling new details tonight in the murder of RIT professor Edlin Chun.
Today, Rochester police announced the arrest of 2 people in her death. 27-year-old Jarrell Henry and his girlfriend, 26-year-old Natalie Johnson. Henry was Chun's former neighbor. Natalie was caught yesterday in New York City.
Amy Young joins us now with the latest on this developing story. And Amy, despite these arrests, this investigation is far from over.
Yes, Maureen and Kevin, police are being very tight-lipped about some of the details surrounding this case because they did say this is an ongoing investigation that started with a robbery and ended with Chun's violent death. Jarrell Henry was a parole. His girlfriend, Natalie Johnson, was brought here from New York City this morning. Police say Henry and Chun were once neighbors and knew each other well. Police say Henry and Johnson went to Chun's home on Hazelwood Terrace on Sunday, February 3rd, robbed Chun, then fatally shot her twice in the head. Police say the 2 then stole her car and dumped Chun's body in a ravine in Tryon Park in Rochester. Her body was discovered by a Monroe County maintenance worker in the park 3 days later.
He did become a person of interest early on in the investigation. There was a parole detainer filed, which allowed the police and other law enforcement to do a thorough job. That's why it took some time before we were able to actually lodge the charges.
Now, those who knew and cared deeply for Chun continue to support the adjunct RIT professor, born and raised in Hawaii. Chun belonged to more than a dozen community organizations. She was a lover of the arts.
We're pleased that this is the first step to closure in justice. You know, when these people took Edlin's life, they not only took her life, but they took all that she gives to the community every day.
Chun had no family here in Rochester, but many friends that felt like a second family, and everyone we spoke to talks about what a sweet, petite woman she was with a giant, big heart.
And ironically enough, how much she cared about this community.
Indeed.
Where's the case go from here?
Well, there will be a preliminary hearing that is set for Wednesday of next week. Many details may come out then as evidence is presented to the grand jury.
And both entered not guilty pleas today, correct?
That's correct.
What have you got coming up for us at 6 o'clock?
Well, coming up at 6, we talked to one of Chun's longtime RIT colleagues, and they had lunch every day for a number of years together. So more on that coming up tonight at 6.
All right, thanks, Amy.
A lot of people loved Edlin Chun, and there are 3 upcoming memorial services being held to honor her. The first will be tomorrow from 5 to 8 in the evening at Mario's on Monroe Avenue. The second memorial is next Tuesday at 4:30 in the afternoon at the Interfaith Chapel Student Alumni Center Union Building on the RIT campus. And the third will be held March 9th at 2 p.m. at St. Mark's and St. John's Church on Culver Road. Friends and family are invited to all 3 memorials. We've got all this information on our website. To find it, go to rochesterhomepage.net and just look for this story on the front page.
New at 5, a judge has agreed to review a petition against the state's tough new gun control law. The petition was filed with the state Supreme Court in Warren County, asking that the court temporarily stop implementation of the New York SAFE Act because it was rushed into law. The judge shot down that request, but did agree to review the petition with both the governor's office and critics of the law sometime in the next few weeks. Yesterday, thousands of gun rights supporters rallied outside the Capitol in Albany against the SAFE Act. Governor Cuomo did issue a statement on the lawsuit today, simply saying, quote, "We believe the law is and the process was valid and constitutional."
Another step for Kodak in emerging from bankruptcy. The company has finalized its plan, and Kodak is now committed to making at least $600 million in cash through the sale of its personalized and digital imaging businesses. The benchmark was originally $700 million. Kodak will also hire a firm to begin the search for a new board of directors. A bankruptcy judge must approve all these plans. That could happen later this month. Financial analyst George Conboy from Brighton Securities is in our newsroom right now. George, is this a positive step for Kodak?
Well, it's good news, bad news, Kevin. The good news is that the lenders who are going to give them the loan they need to emerge from bankruptcy lowered the amount they have to get for those businesses they're selling from $700 to $600, which means, great, we're making it easier, you'll still get your loan. The bad news part is that's $100 million less they'll have to come out of bankruptcy with, and it also indicates that Kodak is having a struggle in selling those businesses. It's kind of a buyer's market, and they're not in the driver's seat.
So you're saying it's like you couldn't get a buyer for your home and you're lowering the price.
Exactly. It's never good news. You're glad to sell it, but you wish you could get more.
So what do you think about them hiring a firm to hire a new board of directors?
Nothing wrong with that, except it's about 10 years too late, Kevin. Board of directors watched as the company slid off the road into bankruptcy. The only thing that they ought to be doing in addition to getting a new board of directors is getting a new CEO, but I imagine a new board will bring a new CEO. I can't imagine anyone who wants to be an investor in Eastman Kodak when it becomes what it's going to become, having the same guy who will run it the way he ran it.
So you say this doesn't bode well for Antonio Perez?
I think he's history when the bankruptcy's finished.
Okay, that's George Conboy from Brighton Securities. Thank you very much. Now, we have been following Kodak's journey through bankruptcy for more than a year now. You'll find all of our stories on our website. Just go to rochesterhomepage.net and click on the Focus on Kodak tab.
We are your local election headquarters. If the name Bill Reilich sounds familiar, it's for good reason. He is currently state assemblyman of the 134th District, and he heads the Monroe County Republican Committee. But now he's got his sights set on being the next Greasetown supervisor. Allie Toohey is here now with more on his new aspiration. Allie?
Maureen, the assemblyman/chairman is well known across the county and in Greece. After all, he's born and raised there. So far, he's the only one to announce his run, but he'll have a significant edge being the Republican candidate. According to the Monroe County Board of Elections, there's about 19,400 registered Democrats compared to the 22,000 registered Republicans. Reilich says he's already focused on the future of Greece.
What you have to do is look at cutting costs and be more efficient in what you do. And I did that in business. I've done that at headquarters, and I will soon do that in the town of Greece.
Bill comes with a wealth of government experience, but more importantly, he comes from small business. He understands the everyday challenges of individuals and families and the people that run companies.
Current town supervisor John Allberger can't seek re-election due to term limitations. Should Reilich win, he could remain the GOP chairman, but would have to step down from the New York State Assembly. Allie Toohey, News 8.
Thanks, Allie. Now, the leader of Monroe County's Democratic Party, State Assemblyman Joe Morelli, says there will be a tough fight for Greasetown supervisor. They will announce some names in the coming weeks. Morelli issued a statement to News 8 today saying, for far too long, Greasetown government has been linked with scandal and corruption. We believe Greece residents and taxpayers deserve much better than that. It's time for new leadership and a new direction. Morelli did not mention any potential Democratic candidates for supervisor. However, among the names being bounced around are David Garrettson and his wife, Rita. The committee will make their official choice at a meeting in mid-April.
Well, just 7 hours to go until sequestration, and at this point, it looks like the $85 billion across-the-board spending cuts are going to happen. The president met with congressional leaders this morning to hammer out a last-minute deal, but it was to no avail. The president says lawmakers had a year and a half to come up with a budget compromise, but Democrats pushed for tax hikes and Republicans wanted to trim spending. Both sides are still pointing fingers.
This discussion about revenue, in my view, is over. It's about taking on the spending problem here in Washington.
This is not a win for anybody. This is a loss for the American people.
The cuts will take effect at 11:59 tonight.
Congresswoman Louise Slaughter says the sequester will impact the newly reauthorized Violence Against Women Act. She co-authored this legislation, and she talked with our Mark Gruba about it today.
Congresswoman Louise Slaughter had mixed news for members of Monroe County's Domestic Violence Consortium. gathered at Brockport's Metro Center in Rochester for their annual legislative breakfast. The good news, the 1994 Violence Against Women Act was reauthorized by Congress Thursday. Slaughter co-authored the bill, which adds important protections for gays and lesbians, as well as Native Americans, students, and sex trafficking victims.
The new things in this bill answer today's questions more than the other bill did, so I'm happy with it.
The bad news, Slaughter noted the sequester could cause $20 million in funding to be cut from the newly reauthorized law. Allison O'Malley is the chair of the Domestic Violence Consortium.
Every dollar that we spend on trying to prevent and support victims of domestic violence is an essential dollar. So the loss of even one has a significant impact.
The consortium is also focused here in New York on restoring $1.2 million in funds to the state budget for non-residential domestic violence victims. What would be the impact of losing that funding from the state budget?
To be honest, I don't know. It depends on how fast our team can work on trying to secure other funding. It might mean that we wouldn't have those services.
And the need is great. A 2010 ACT Rochester survey of Monroe County found over 6,600 domestic violence arrests in 1 year. But as one person noted, statistics are just people with their tears wiped away. The fight to end domestic violence is one that's felt, not just quantified. In Rochester, Mark Ruba, News 8.
And we'll have a lot more coverage on the looming sequester deadline coming up on the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley right after News 8 at 6.
News 8 is your home for the 2013 PGA Championship, and we're getting another look at some unique art that you're going to see during the championship. Artists are working on painting gigantic golf balls for this event. These golf balls will be placed all over the community in the months leading up to the PGA, each one taking on its own unique image, as you can see here. One will look like a burger, another a beer pint, and even a globe in there. One of the artists says it's a big project, but it's worth it.
It's kind of all-consuming. You wake up and you know you're going to be covered in foam dust and paint for the full week, which luckily I like that, so I'm good with it. But it's a lot of work.
The PGA Championship takes place August 5th through the 11th at Oak Hill Country Club.
Coming up on News 8 at 5, it's an honor given to only 8 people in the entire country, and a Penfield teacher is one of them.
Want your child to succeed? Feed them breakfast. We'll tell you more about that next.
You're watching the team you can trust. Kevin Doran, Maureen McGuire, and Rochester's most accurate forecast with Chief Meteorologist Scott Hetzko. This is News 8 at 5 in high definition.